Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the week.
So let's talk about Hurricane Helene. When we were recording last week, it was just starting to make its way through the U.S. So first it hit Florida, then Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and the worst of all was the Blue Ridge Mountain area of North Carolina.
Yeah, so they're saying that this is the second worst hurricane to ever hit the United States. And the first, of course, is Katrina. And I'm not sure of that. I think that it might get a little bit worse. I don't think that we truly understand how bad they got hit down there. And the reason is, I think with Katrina, it was the waters rose, but they knew where all the people were in the houses, and they've easily been able to find their bodies and things. But with this hurricane, it was different just because the water just swifted in and was pulling people away. So you might not find anywhere near all of the people that are still missing. So unfortunately, I feel like it's going to go much higher as far as the losses with this, and the videos are just absolutely horrific. I can't even imagine what these people are going through.
No, I mean, I feel like the first video where it really sunk in for me over the weekend, which, by the way, the news is like barely covering this, right? So all this footage I'm seeing is on social media, and there's videos of whole entire houses floating down streets. How insane is that?
I think the reason for, I mean, the news, they, as far as I'm concerned, they can't even get in there, really. The
Yeah.
roads they're kind of on this almost like an island and stuck there in a way that they're even having a hard time getting supplies in. And that could be partially why there isn't as much news coverage, because they can't actually get their people on the ground there, maybe. It is interesting, though, that this horrible thing is happening, that we know is happening, from users on Twitter and Instagram that are documenting this event, and it's not really getting talked about on the news at the level I feel like it should be.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, as of we're recording this, the official death toll has been near 200, but they said hundreds of people are missing. So it's just it's sickening to think about how horrific this is. I've even been just hearing people online being like, I can't get a hold of my family member. I saw that people were hiking up mountains to try to get cell phone reception so they could let their family members know they were alive. I mean, my heart just goes out to everybody affected by this. It's truly horrible. They said flood insurance in the area of Asheville, where they got hit the worst, that surrounding area. Flood insurance is kind of rare there. I mean, would you think to have flood insurance in the mountains?
No, but they did. I mean, I know that they've had a history of a couple floods there, so it's not. Think about this. When we go to Knoebels, which is in the middle of the mountains in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
they have lines all over the place showing how high the water has gone in the park. And some of it is very, very high. And you'll be at Knoebels crossing the bridge, and then you're on the bridge crossing over this little tiny creek. That's what it looks like. And there's signs that show the water is above where your head is. And you're like, no, that couldn't have ever happened here. There's no way. There's no water here. This is like a little tiny creek. It's hard for you to even fathom that that's possible. And it actually was to the point where I sat there and was Googling to see photographs of what it looked like, because I was like, it's just hard for me to even imagine it, because the creek's so tiny and small. And that's the way it works. So when you hear, even, I think the bad flood that last hit this area was in 1916. Like, if it happened there once, it could definitely happen again. Unfortunately, it's scary,
Yeah, it's really horrifying. I mean, it's going to take them years to recover from
Yeah.
this.
And one of the craziest things that you don't even think about in a situation like this, and I saw this absolutely insane video of this swift water going down, somebody caught this on video, and there's a casket just floating in the water.
Oh my God, I saw, yeah, I was not even thinking about, what if you were in this limbo of a loved one dying and having the funeral? I mean, this just hit so suddenly. I also don't think at first we were understanding the magnitude of how horrific this was going to be. And that's maybe why a lot of people weren't taking evacuation notices seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, this happens every single time. Even around here, we get notices that say there's gonna be a flash flood, and I know always blow it off. And Gabe's
Yeah.
always I mean, like, he's constantly, he does this for a living, and he's constantly just like, people try to leave during the thing, they don't want to evacuate, they leave during when it says don't go out because there's a flash flood, and then people think that they could drive through it, and then all of a sudden the water just starts rising and they're trapped in their car, It's
Yeah.
like nuts.
I mean, everybody makes fun of me for going in the basement whenever we get a tornado warning, but
Well,
it's because Gabe's like, if they say to do it, just do it. Like,
yeah, you're such a rule follower. It's hilarious. All right, celebrity news.
oh my god, there has just been so many celebrity deaths all the weekend, so we're gonna do a couple quick mentions because if we talked about them all, they'd have to be an entire episode. First, we have Dame Maggie Smith died, so she was mostly known as playing Professor McGonagall in Harry Potter and the Dowager Countess in Downton Abbey, which was personally my favorite role of hers. I love that show. She began acting in 1952, which is super cool, especially because most of her more well-known roles were later in her life, and I just think she was kind of a badass lady.
Yeah, I've never seen either of those things.
Oh my
I
god.
feel like she was, but when I saw her, I was like, she's familiar. Was she in, um, like that Peter Pan movie maybe? Or
She's in,
Hook,
like,
whatever it's called?
everything.
I don't know. I feel like maybe that's her. Yeah, I definitely have seen her before, but there's not really much to say. She was 89 and she died in the hospital. They didn't say what her cause of death was, so nothing for us to really talk about here.
Yeah, I had seen that maybe she had, Graves' disease, but I don't think that was confirmed. I just saw that mentioned in one article, and then I thought it was cool to note that in 1990, she became a dame through Queen Elizabeth, which is the female equivalent of being knighted, so I thought that was
Oh,
pretty
that is
cool.
cool.
So, yeah, that's really awesome. All right, next up, we have Kris Kristofferson has also died. So he is a famous musician and actor. He is now leaving Willie Nelson as the lone surviving Highwaymen. They are one of my favorite bands ever, even though I said I didn't really like 1980s pop culture that much. But I do really like their work. And he was in the 1976 movie A Star Is Born, which recently was remade with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. So he will be greatly missed in the country music community, and he was a really great musician.
I think he was best well known for his role in the sequel of Pee-wee. He was the ringleader of the circus.
I have not watched that Pee-wee in, like, so long because it made me something when I was a little kid and watching that, like, Pee-wee just made me so uncomfortable. I never was really into it.
Oh god, I was, 'cause I mean, this was obviously in the 80s, like, he had a show, like a TV show that was called Pee-wee's Playhouse that was on our Saturday morning cartoon
Yeah.
rotation, and then they made the movie, and the first one was with Tim Burton, it's so good,
Well, I've
I
seen all
it
of the
Yeah,
movies
like,
and
I don't
Playhouse
know.
and
I
stuff.
mean, whatever, I guess he ended up, like what did he do, like, jerk off in a
He was
movie theater or
jerking
some
it in a
Yeah, I mean,
but it
like,
was an adult
okay.
movie theater, so
Yeah, like, and I think that to do that in public is weird, but, like, I don't think
yeah,
that
it's really
I
weird.
feel like they kinda canceled him after that, and it's just a little ridiculous, like, he is a man, and men do that every day, so, like, get over it.
Yeah, but you really shouldn't do it in a public
So,
space, so
listen, though, honestly, like, you have a theater that's showing porn, like, what is the point of going?
I
Really, like, what's the point of going? Isn't that what everybody's doing there?
I don't know.
Who watches that to not finish the act? Like, it's seriously, like, it's just let's say what it is. Anyway, Kris Kristofferson apparently he had lots of medical things going on. Again, he was old, 89, 88 years old, so he died of old age, I guess.
Oh
My
my
favorite
god.
thing now. But he had, like, really bad memory loss, and then they first thought he had Alzheimer's or dementia maybe, and then they determined that it could have been because he played sports a lot when he was a kid and had a lot of concussions, and he might have had early stages of, CTE or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which you see in people who play football and, boxers and things like that. And he had Lyme's disease apparently, fibromyalgia, which maybe was cause of the Lyme disease. So, it's just like interesting things to note. I don't know if any of it actually was contributed to his cause of death. I mean, he lived to be 88, so it wasn't that bad, apparently. But
No.
just interesting to note.
All right, next up, Pete Rose, former Philadelphia Philly, disgraced baseball player. He has also died in his 80s.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't give a shit what you say. Like, he was awesome, and he deserves to be recognized for that. He just made terrible choices with certain
He was
things.
just
But
the manager of a team and gambling, betting on his own team. No big deal. Lifetime ban from baseball. No
yeah,
biggie.
but that just doesn't take away the fact that listen, like they want to be specific about that, but like they haven't banned people that are known that they were juicing, right? And that's why their records are so good. People beat their wives and shit. Like you know what I mean? It's just it's kind of like why pick and choose, and it doesn't take away from the fact that he was a really good athlete.
It also nonchalantly came up in his little docuseries that when he was 30 years old, he was dating a 16-year-old. So I don't really like that.
It was the time.
I really don't like that. But yeah.
So your grandfather was 28 and dating a 17-year-old. What's the difference? It's literally like a year.
First of all, I've never said that was acceptable either, and we make fun of him for it all the time.
It was the time. My mom always says that was the time, and I was like, yeah, but why'd you lie to your parents about how old he was?
He went to prom with her.
I know. Just let's not even talk about it. It's so weird.
And I never, for the record, I've never said that that was okay.
And like now I'm thinking about it that I'm a product of that relationship. So it explains a lot.
It does certainly explains a lot. But
anyway, Pete Rose, you can't talk shit on him. He's a Philly, and we're like huge Philly people here. So, you know what bums me out though, that his I just was telling Gabe about this, that I read that his grandson was going to LaSalle, I believe, for baseball, and he was very excited to hear that one of his family members was going to be playing baseball in the city of Philadelphia, and I was kind of looking forward to how that kid's career was going, just because your grandpa's Pete Rose, for Christ's sakes, right? Like,
well,
I'm curious to see how good he was going to be.
I always think that when Cody Clemens is up to him, like, how do you live up to your parent being this like superstar player?
But I mean, he's good though.
No, he's really good.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, and his dad was a pitcher. It's just like a different thing, you know. But I was curious to see if you know, and he probably wanted to see his grandson play too, and it's kind of a bummer for that. But okay, next there's a whole line of people we need to talk about today.
And another Philadelphia sports person. So former 76er Dikembe Mutombo has died at 58 years old following a battle with brain cancer. He was 7'2".
Yeah, so when I first heard that he died, because I really haven't been following his life, but I thought that because he was so tall, he was 7'2". One of the things is when a person has like a big body like that, their heart could be really big, and they sometimes don't live as long. I was thinking that could have been a possibility, but they just said he had a brain tumor or brain cancer, but there's two different kinds of brain cancers you could get if you want to do a broad category. So you either can get it that it starts in the brain, that's called primary brain cancer, or most commonly when you hear someone has cancer in their brain, it's because it's spread from like their breast cancer or lung cancer to their brain. So he had a primary cancer of his brain, and it was probably glioblastoma multiforme, which is just a really bad diagnosis to get. And the reason is because the tumor doesn't grow like a nodule. It kind of infiltrates the brain tissue, and in order for them to cut it out, they just can't cut out that much of your brain, or you wouldn't be able to live, right?
Yeah.
So it's just really hard to get rid of. A lot of people that do get it die from it, and so he did got diagnosed like 2 years ago and was treated, but it just, unfortunately, he died. I mean, it's 58 is just way too young to be dying.
It is. And, you know, we always are talking about when people die too, that suddenly like people are always like, they were so great, blah, blah, blah. But this dude actually seemed like he was an all around really great person. Everybody looked up to him. He was very charitable and just a really nice guy. So it's definitely a horrific loss to the community.
All right. So the next one, we've talked about this before. We have, because someone asked a question. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and getting back to what you said earlier about like them just like the press just being like somebody died from old age, whatever. So like, let's talk about Queen Elizabeth. So former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Is Boris not like the harshest name in the world? I'm just thinking of it.
It is. It just reminds you of, You know why? Because I guess there was this show on, you probably don't even know it. It was called Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, I know it.
And I think the guy's name was Boris, but the lady used to say it, and she had that like deep, like Boris,
Maybe
like
that's what
that
I'm
very
thinking
yeah. Like
about.
I just think that's why it has that. Maybe I don't know.
All right, so your boy Boris revealed in his memoir that Queen Elizabeth had bone cancer and knew she was dying in the summer leading up to her death. She died like 2 days before my wedding.
Were you sad about that?
I was a little bit because I like the
Yeah, you're a big
I'm
monarchy
fascinated
person.
by the monarchy.
So I think I wrote something up in the gross room when that happened because obviously because her death certificate said she died of old age, and I actually thought that was hilarious because that would never fly, but in America anyway. But apparently, some of our members that live in the UK say that they use that as a cause of death on the
It's
death certificates.
crazy.
Yeah. But we did hear that we heard that she had leukemia, and now and we did talk about that, how that would be very the royal family doesn't want you to know that anything's wrong with them, kind of a thing,
Mhm.
which is crazy because of everything that came out since she died, that Prince Charles had cancer, and so does Princess as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
So
what's in the walls there?
although we don't know what cancer either of them have, correct? It because remember he went in for prostate cancer surgery, but then there was rumors floating that it had something to do with his pancreas, maybe. I just assumed when they took out his prostate, because I thought they took out his prostate because he had a large prostate, because that's typical for a guy that age. And then when they look at it under the microscope, they could say, oh, there's a little focus of cancer here or something. But then it was
Um,
not related to his prostate, they said.
I feel like there's been speculation but not official confirmation of exactly which cancers they
Yeah.
had.
She had leukemia, which would go along with cancer in her bone technically, because it's cancer of the blood cells that are in the bones. So, and when people talk about medical stuff, they don't necessarily get it specific, but that probably matches up to what we've been hearing rumor wise.
Yeah, I mean, it is I understand they want the privacy, but it is interesting they work so hard to keep it
It is weird.
private.
It's just like, lady, you're old and you got cancer. Like, welcome to the world. Like, you're not. Maybe
Yeah.
they want people to think that they're superhumans or something. I don't know.
I mean, it is crazy because I'm always reading like she's the longest reigning monarch in UK history and everything, and it is kind of nuts to think about because she was so young when she became the queen, and I just don't think this would ever happen again.
No. Yeah, it is. It's very interesting.
And she wasn't even supposed to be queen. I mean, her uncle abdicated the throne, which is why her dad became the king, which is why she then became the
Yeah.
queen. So, like, that's really interesting as well.
Yeah, totally.
But all right, let's get on to Marcia Cross. So, she's most famous for playing Brie Vandekamp on Desperate Housewives, which I used to watch religiously at a really inappropriately young age.
I know. I'm like, what were you, like Lillian's age or something? 12, 13?
Yeah, I really was. And like I really want the girls to start watching Gilmore Girls, and like I was rewatching it the other day and they make a lot of jokes about sex and stuff that I think will go right over their heads. But then I'm always like I was watching Forensic Files, Desperate Housewives, Real Housewives, all of that. But in 2017, she was at her gyno getting a routine exam and her doctor found a mass which turned out to be anal cancer.
So, when you go to the gynecologist and they stick their finger up your ass, it's the worst. Like, it's just like, oh, I'm just going to do this, like, so when they do that for a reason, and this is the reason. So they did it's called a digital rectal exam, and they found a tumor in her rectum. And it ended up that they did testing on it, and they found out that it was originating from the anus, and it was diagnosed as anus cancer. And that's it's very rare. And sometimes it gets lumped in with colorectal cancer, but it's completely different how you get it. So colorectal cancer can be because of genetics, or it could be because of your diet or drinking alcohol and things like that. Whereas anal cancer is very specific, and it's usually caused by the HPV virus, which is the same one that causes cervical cancer. And I guess, back in the day, a lot of women used to die from cervical cancer. It used to be the number one cause of cancer death until they started doing these screening tests and pap tests. And that's why you go to the gynecologist for the most part to get that checked. And they don't really screen for the anus, and people have anal sex, and you're just as much at risk there as you are in the cervix. So they do screen for some people, especially men who have sex with men. People that are higher risk population, especially people that are immunosuppressed or something. But luckily, her doctor figured this out and found the mass when it was seemingly early enough that she was able to undergo radiation and treatment. And she's saying that there's no evidence that she has cancer anymore.
No, that's really, I mean, this is why it's very important to go to your routine. That was the point of this article, was she was stressing the importance of going to your routine doctor's appointments, even though, life could get in the way and you might have to reschedule and forget. It is important to go.
And just to note this, that I wrote a celebrity death dissection years ago for Farrah Fawcett, because this is how Farrah Fawcett actually died. And it's not talked about a lot because it's not, it's kind of like taboo because it's related to anal sex usually and things like that, and people don't want to talk about it. And luckily it doesn't happen that frequently. But when you get it, it sucks. Like it's right around, it's around your anus. Like it's terrible. You have to get treatment there. Sometimes you have to get surgery to either cut a piece of it out or to cut out your entire rectum along with your anus. It's a lot. And the earlier it gets caught, the better. I mean, ultimately, if they did screening like they do with the pap, they do like an anal pap basically, they could catch it very, very early while it's still precancer. But she already had a mass, so it was already a little bit more advanced when they found it. But it's cool that she's talking about it like that.
Yeah, it really is. Especially like you said, like the stigma around it and everything. She said also part of her healing journey was coming public with it and, sharing images going through it and just being able to be public about losing her hair and stuff, because it's not easy to go through. And this is why I think it's important in general to, we have talked about before, like sharing miscarriages and infertility and stuff, because it's like, it just helps people feel some sense of belonging and like you're not alone in it.
Yeah, and with Farrah Fawcett too, like she was diagnosed too late, and that's why it spread, because it was too late, and that's why they do these uncomfortable things to you at the doctor's office. Okay, freak accidents.
So, as if the hurricane wasn't horrible enough in Georgia, they got hit with this chemical lab fire. So, about 30 miles away from Atlanta, around 5 a.m., this fire had broken out on the roof of a BioLab facility. So, that's a plant where they make pool chemicals. And I guess at some point it went out, and then water from a malfunctioning sprinkler head then came in contact with a water reactive chemical, which then set off this other huge plume and fire. I don't understand how this happens. Like, I'm not a chemist, so this was like mind blowing to me.
It's just crazy because of the amount of people that live in the area. There was like some 90,000 people that were like they had to stay locked in their houses and stuff.
Yeah, so
at first.
they evacuated some of the area, and then the rest of the people had to close all their windows
Shelter
and
in
doors.
place,
Yeah,
that's what it was called.
shelter in place. They had to close all their windows and doors and turn their air conditioning off. I mean, I imagine it's still hot in Georgia right now, so that must have sucked. And then it's scary.
Well, and then also there's all of these fumes of like people. So one person that was interviewed said they used to work in a pool house, and that's what it smells like. That smell is terrible. If you ever go in an indoor pool and you go in, sometimes it's like very, it like slaps you in the face. It kind of burns your eyes a little bit and burns your throat if it's very strong, or one of those indoor water parks. It's just like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're suffocating. It's just gross. But rest assured, the EPA said that the levels are safe to breathe in, and we all know that they can be trusted. They told all of the firefighters and emergency workers at 9/11 that it was also safe to work down there. So,
I mean, the pictures of this look like Chernobyl 2.0. Like, it's horrible. I was also thinking about the incident at 3 Mile Island when they also told everybody in the surrounding neighborhoods it was safe.
yeah, but that was radiation.
I
Like
know.
that's just like a little bit different.
So then,
But still, chemicals aren't good to breathe in either.
So as of this morning, they said, don't worry, the fire's out, the chemicals neutralized, but it has settled on the ground close to Atlanta, so residents in Atlanta may smell a really strong chlorine odor today.
Yeah.
So if you live in that area, let us know how it's going on the ground, because it's like unreal.
It really is. And what You think about all these people. So it was 90,000 shelter in place, 17,000 people evacuated. What are you going to say? Like, yeah, you all breathed in some really terrible shit and you're going to get cancer in 5 years or whatever. Like,
Yeah, they're not telling them.
yeah.
This is also not the first incident this plant has had. Apparently, they also had this really huge fire in 2004. So that's really
Right.
reassuring. Thanks.
This story is outrageous.
In China, people are just, going about their day, driving down the street, riding their bikes, walking along, and all of a sudden there's this Old Faithful style eruption out of the ground. And what was it?
It was a poop-cano.
Poopcano. So, oh my god, this article we referenced was so insane. So apparently a sewage line exploded, sending poop up 30 feet in the air before it splattered down on everybody below. What would you even do if this happened to you?
I would pray that I was in a car and not just walking up the street because that's so disgusting.
Yeah.
It's not only disgusting, it's terribly bad to have any of that. Like, imagine if you're walking around and it spills on your head. You don't even know what's happening. Like, it could get in your mouth. You can get really sick.
Yeah. So they said the explosion occurred when construction workers were conducting a pressure test on a newly installed sewage pipe. I mean, this thing looks absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, they all got a poop bath, and on top of that, people had to use their windshield wipers and to get the shit off of the windshield.
And there's
just
like
so gross.
There's this dash cam video that shows the entire thing going down and then the poop subsequently landing on this person's windshield.
Oh my god.
My favorite part of this article was that it was talking about Dante's Peak, the most amazing movie ever, and said it was Dante's poop. That was so hilarious.
Well, I want to watch that soon. I think that would freak the girls out. I feel like it freaked you out when you saw it.
I love that movie, and Ricky never saw it, and I made him watch it, and now he's obsessed with it too.
It is really good.
It's such a good movie. All right, so in Zambia, this guy and his wife were on a 5-week safari vacation, which, like, I'm jealous. That sounds really nice. So they were on a canoe just hanging out when a hippo suddenly charged the boat. The wife was able to swim away, but the husband was chewed up by the hippo.
This is a known there.
Yeah.
Like,
Hippos
if
are very dangerous.
They're actually considered one of the most dangerous land mammals in the world, really. You would think if I said to you, like, what's more dangerous, a hippo or a lion? Like, everyone would be like, clearly it's a lion, right? No. Lions, as of like last year, I think lions killed like 20 people and hippos killed 500 people, they think. It's just like they do that.
Well, I
It's
think
just not known. Like, if you live in America, you would think it's not.
I think this article is really interesting timing because everybody's been obsessed with this little mini pygmy hippo named Mudang. I'm sure you've seen pictures of her and she's really cute.
It is really cute.
And pygmy hippos aren't really considered dangerous to humans, but regular hippos are extremely dangerous to humans, and this is what can happen. So
I remember the first time I heard about that because I always thought the hippos were like cute, like this hippo, the famous hippo, just like they were kind of cute when they're babies. And because when I was a kid, it was like hungry hippos was like
they're hungry for humans.
Yes. And I remember I was working in the lab when I was very young, like 19 years old. And one of the courier guys was from Africa. And he was telling me that he knew somebody that got killed by a hippo going to get water, And I couldn't believe, and then he was like, no, they're really, really dangerous. And I thought he was messing with me. And I was just like, no, they're not. They're cute. And he's like, no, they're vicious. And I was like, they're not vicious. They have big square teeth. And yeah, it's true. So anybody that lives there is like, yeah, no doubt a hippo attacked this guy. But maybe, and I would think if you were going on a safari for 5 weeks, you'd be a little bit more educated about the land and the terrain that you're visiting, but apparently not.
I mean, he said the hippo came up and grabbed me from underneath and took me down to the bottom of the river before letting me go. So basically, when the hippo first attacked him, it dislocated his shoulder. So that's why he wasn't really able to get away efficiently like his wife was. And then he said he looked down at his thigh, which was badly chewed up. He could see flesh sticking out from his shorts and could see blood on the left side as well. And when he got to the hospital, the surgeon said he's the only person he's ever met that survived a hippo attack of this nature.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So definitely really interesting. But that vacation sounds
Could you imagine? I was thinking that when I was reading this story, like, could you imagine he's going to go home to the UK and resume his normal life. And just imagine like your body was inside of a hippopotamus mouth. Like
Yeah.
it's just outrageous.
Yeah, it is outrageous, but it is what it is, I guess, when you're going on trips like that. So
Yeah.
be on the lookout for hungry hippos. But all right. Last summer, this chick went on a walk with her 60-pound dog at night. So she said normally she would prefer a rope style leash because of how big the dog was, but because of a bunch of different circumstances and out of convenience, she just grabbed one of those retractable leashes. So on their walk, the dog saw a rabbit and started freaking out. And when she pulled back on it, it snapped and smacked her in the eye.
And I think every single person that owns a dog, like I don't have a dog, but I have some of my best friends have dogs, and I hear these stories all the time that they can relate to this. Like the dog sees an animal and starts going for it. Like that's typical, right? And this is just like the true definition of a freak accident. She gets hit in the eye, and she knew right away something was terribly wrong because she said she was gushing blood everywhere. And then she said like her fight or flight response kicked in and she was able to get home. And by the time she got home and saw her mom, she was very pale because she was bleeding so bad. And they were able to call 911 and get her to a trauma center right away. And she had lacerated her eyelid, was like filleted open basically, and broke bones around her orbit. That's the bone that holds the eyeball in place, and had a bunch of surgeries. And then they determined that they weren't able to save her eye. So not only was she blind, but she had to lose her actual eye as well.
Yeah, and afterwards she got a prosthetic eye, and I think it looks pretty good.
It looks really good, and I feel terrible that she feels insecure about it. She was saying in the article that she wears sunglasses most of the time because I do think that it looks really good. And it reminded me of the case that's in my book of the guy who lost his eye when he was really young. I think he was like 6 or something. And he has this really cool box of all of the eyes that he's had throughout his years as he was growing. And she said that she would have to get a new prosthetic eye every 3 to 5 years. But if you just showed me a photograph of her and didn't tell me this story, I would barely, if you were just like, what do you think about this girl? I would just be like, oh, she's just like a pretty young girl. Like I wouldn't think anything of it.
I actually think the only reason you can tell in the photograph is just because of the sheen of the prosthetic, that the light just bounces off of it differently than a regular eye. But otherwise, I feel like you can't tell at all.
Yeah. I mean, it really is just such a freak accident. And it was the thing broke because that could happen to anyone. Is it a malfunction with it? I don't understand.
I think there's weight limits with them, so that could have been a factor maybe.
Yeah. I don't really know because like I said, I don't have a dog, but I mean, obviously this shouldn't happen, and I'm kind of not surprised if this is the first time that this happened.
Yeah.
Because it's just, think about it. And the end of it probably has a big clasp to hook onto their leash around their neck. So that big heavy piece of metal probably is what hit her in the face that hard. You know what I mean?
Oh my
Whatever's
God,
on the
yeah.
end. Yeah, it's just really a sad case. And I hope as time goes on, she doesn't feel embarrassed by her face because she's beautiful. It's just like everybody understands that this shit happened to you, and you know?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
So as we say, we have lots of cases that go along with the stories in the gross room, and we have Mother Knows Death gross room. They kind of go hand in hand. We have a really good one coming up that we haven't talked about yet, but I'll let you know later in this episode what it is, and then you could see the pictures. That it really just gives you a full picture of the whole case that we're talking about. Last week or last episode, we talked about the guy who was found with cheese all over his body in 6 shocking stories. And it was determined that he had died from autoerotic asphyxiation. And I mean, the story itself is outrageous, but you have to see the photos that go along with the case, just like lots of other stories we talk about here on Mother Knows Death.
Yeah, and everybody had a lot to say about that one in the gross room, so the community discussions are always very interesting.
Yeah, and then they always give me like these different ideas for titles. I was like, damn, I should have used that. And
all right, well, you guys can head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up for only $5.99 for the month.
Okay, true crime.
All right, so at a Chick-fil-A near us the other day, this guy pulls through the drive-thru with his 6-year-old daughter, and as he's placing the order, one of the employees notices a really strong smell of alcohol. They also notice that there's an open container, there's a 6-pack of beer, there's also empty cans of beer in the car. So they didn't really feel good about it. So in this totally heroic move, they told this guy, like, oh, why don't you go pull up in this spot over there because we're a little busy, so your order's going to take longer than normal. So he pulls over, they call the cops, and they show up and then give him a field sobriety test.
That's so great. It's so awesome that they picked this up because when they gave him the sobriety test and they gave him the breathalyzer test, his blood alcohol was 0.16, which is double the legal limit. And he was driving drunk with that little girl in the car.
Yeah, and it's like it's so cool because they thought something wasn't right. They took the most appropriate steps to not like set him off or anything. They just followed protocol, and then the cops came and did their job, and they saved this little girl's life, possibly many other people's lives too if this guy was driving this drunk.
I hate just hearing that somebody like this lives near us. You know what I mean? And is
Yeah.
driving around like that with a child in the car, just like, and so the cops distract the little girl. I mean, you always wonder what happens in a case like this, right?
Yeah, I think the cops handled it pretty good in this case.
Yeah, because you don't want the girl to get upset. She has no idea what's going on. Apparently, he does this in front of her all the time, and it's normal, So
Yeah.
she doesn't know anything's wrong, and they had someone come pick her up. They were just talking about like little kid things with her, and didn't even see that the dad was getting arrested. And could you just imagine getting a phone call that you have to go pick up a child in your family because of something like this? It's so disturbing.
No, I mean,
I would just be so mad.
I'd be mad, and what do you do after that too, Because you
Uh,
don't want the kid ever to be alone driving with that person again.
No, he should lose custody of the child. I mean, I hope he would.
Yeah, I don't
What
know how
what
they're gonna
happens after?
handle
I don't
that.
know what happens after that. I mean, he'll get arrested and he probably won't even I mean, can you go to jail for doing that? I feel like you don't even really get that much trouble. It's
Well,
maybe you can because it's endangering the welfare of a child or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought this story was, most people that are in these situations would be like, that's not my business. I don't care. But it's cool that these people took an approach.
Yeah, it is, and they acted so cool.
Yeah.
Just like very procedural.
Yeah, it's like kind of an amazing story because people just don't take the steps to do this type of stuff. So it's really awesome to hear that they like looked out. They like really probably saved her life if he was that messed up.
You never really think about this, but they, especially the way that Chick-fil-A has it set up that you order and there's a person that's like standing right next to your car and looking into your car and stuff. They probably see some outrageous shit.
I'm like, they
I'm telling
see
you.
all the trash I shove in all
You
the
know-
side compartments.
They're like a different breed, and I always want to talk to somebody that actually works there or worked there because so my kids have this thing that every single time we go to Chick-fil-A, they want me to give a fake name or they want Gabe to give a fake name. And Gabe is better at it because I don't like lying to people like that. So the kids every time we'll pull up, they'll say your name's Taylor Swift. Say your name is Shrek. That was the big one last week. So I have all these funny receipts that say my name's like Shrek, and I'll like look at them straight up and just be like, they'll say, "Can I have a name for your order?" And I'll say Taylor Swift, and then they say, "Okay, your order will be ready." They don't even Lillian
acknowledge
loves it. Lillian loves it because they don't even like crack a smile. They don't even acknowledge that you're saying some outrageous shit. Like Gabe will say Darth Vader and like just crazy shit. The girls are just like they like think it's the funniest shit ever, but they never break face ever.
No.
Like ever.
No.
It's kind of amazing. They're very like procedural there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always think, too, like, they're always saying my pleasure at the end of it. I'm like, what's this, like, horrific...
It's very culty.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this horrific documentary come out called My Pleasure? And it's, like, the deep, dark side of Chick-fil-A. But, I don't know. This is super cool. I mean, I think these employees are super awesome for doing it.
Yeah, really.
All right, next. In Mississippi, a 61-year-old woman shot and killed her 79-year-old mother in the parking lot of an emergency room and then turned the gun on herself and took her own life. So now the coroner has come out to say that she had a cancerous brain tumor that altered her brain.
This is exactly why it's important to do an autopsy on people because normally, like a normal person would find a person that was shot themselves, right, in a car, and they would say, "Oh, the cause of death is suicide. She killed herself, gunshot wound to the head. Manner of death is suicide." And they do the autopsy, and they find out that, you know, she did kill. Her manner of death is still suicide. She did kill herself. She did murder her mother, all that stuff. But it's important to note that she had a brain tumor that they thought was definitely altering her mental status. And because that's like that, and that could be helpful for family members. Like this woman might have had a kid and killed herself and then killed the kid's grandmom. It would be helpful to know that, at least in that situation, that, oh, she had a brain tumor and she wasn't thinking straight or something like that. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it like makes it. I don't know if it makes it better necessarily, but I feel like it could maybe be a little more comforting knowing that person wasn't just like a very violent person and
Yeah,
chose to do
totally.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So that's why, because you never know. Sometimes people kill themselves and then you find out that they had really bad cancer and they knew about it, and that's why, like, it makes it, because I think getting a diagnosis of suicide or finding out that your family member died because of that is terrible, and it might just make it like a little bit better to know that there might have been a reason behind it like that.
oh yeah, totally.
Okay, medical news.
In Austria, a 37-year-old man had a history of depression and alcohol abuse, so one day he decided to take 4 or 5 magic mushrooms in a secluded house, which then sent him into a psychotic state with hallucinations.
Yeah, so psilocybin has been very popular in the news lately because they've been doing research and seeing that if you give it to people under medical supervision in certain doses, that it could actually help people that have mental illness and depression and anxiety. But they always urge, don't try to do this on your own, because if you take too much of it, it could cause the opposite effect and make your symptoms even more strong and more profound. And in this case, this guy he was having psychosis from taking these magic mushrooms, and he ended up taking an axe and cutting off his penis in several pieces. And then he got a cup of snow, put the pieces of his penis in the cup of snow, and then he he was walking around bleeding everywhere looking for help. He finally got to the hospital, and shockingly, they were able to reattach some of the pieces of it. Not all of the pieces were viable, but some of the
Yeah.
pieces, they were able to get the head of his penis and at least 2 inches of his penis back on, which is awesome, because otherwise he would have been missing it. And now, I mean, he was able to heal. He had some complications, but he's even able to have an erection again. So the surgeons did a wonderful job, and this is just like a public service announcement that just because you shouldn't self-treat at home. We learned that from Matthew Perry and just all this stuff. Like, just because things are okay to take under medical supervision, that's why, because they know what they're doing with dosages and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they also urge that you definitely don't do it alone like this because you don't want to end up chopping off your own genitals. So
Yeah, so this is the case I was actually talking about that I'll be writing up in the gross room this week, because I have the photos to go along with this that you might want to see, and you could see the after picture, what it looks like after they did the repair and stuff. It's pretty amazing.
all right, so next, a woman was taken to social media to warn others of shopping from Goodwill bins after she said she got hand, foot, and mouth disease.
It's possible. I mean, a lot of people were saying, why wouldn't you look through the stuff with gloves? I don't think that I would
Yeah, I
necessarily
was
do
like, I
that
would
either.
never think to use gloves at a thrift store ever.
You know what, though? I do think about that sometimes. If you're at the thrift store and you see like couches for sale or pillows or rugs, how do you know that the person wasn't getting rid of it, especially if it's pretty good? If they weren't getting rid of it because they had like a flea infestation in their house, or they had lice or something like that, those types of things can live off of the body for a while. You know what I mean? And Coxsackie virus, which is called the virus that causes hand, foot, and mouth disease, that could live on surfaces for up to 2 weeks. So, and it's extremely contagious. So, I mean, it makes sense that she did get it from that. I don't know how she could exactly prove that's where she picked it up.
Yeah, can't this if it lives on surfaces, can't you theoretically get it from picking up
Like the
something?
grocery
Yeah.
stores. Yeah, like that's why I was saying I don't know how she could pinpoint it unless it was like the only time she left the house in a couple day period or something. I'm not sure. But usually you see it's very common in children because daycares and school and kids and snot and touching and there are like petri dishes in the school, so it's not as common for adults to get it unless they get it from a kid that got it from being in an area like that, but it's totally possible.
Yeah. All right. In Disney World, a 5-year-old boy and his parents were on the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster, and about 20 seconds in, the boy stopped breathing and started having a seizure.
God, this is what's so scary because there's all these kinds of genetic health heart defects especially that kids could have that you never would really know that they had it until their
Something
body
like
was
this.
yeah. Could you just imagine being in Disney World with your kid and going on that ride? The kid apparently like passed out during the ride and the mom was like knew something was terribly wrong and luckily they pulled the kid out of the ride and they were able to give him CPR right then and there and there was a nurse and an EMT there that was able to get his heart going again and they had a defibrillator too there so they got him to the hospital. They like medevaced him to the hospital. I can't imagine what this mom went through. The kid's fine. The kid's fine, which is good. He had some rare heart thing called catecholamergic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. And it's a really rare, they call it CPTV for a reason, because who the hell ever wants to try to pronounce that again? But it's a rare condition that causes the heart to have an arrhythmia when the heart is under stress or like extreme periods of excitement or stress. So this probably would have like reared its ugly head at some other point, but like I think being on Guardians of the Galaxy as a 5-year-old is a very surreal ride and also very exciting ride and just thrilling and that's why that happened. It's just so freaking scary.
It is so scary, especially because if something like this happens and you're like screaming for help, everybody else is screaming because it's a ride. So how are you supposed to
Yeah,
stop the
and
whole ride?
Disney
And
has like long rides. It's not just like, oh, you're on the boardwalk and it's over in 3 seconds, you know?
oh yeah, totally. But I don't
I'm
know.
glad he's okay though.
Me
He
too.
looks like he looks so cute in the pictures and I mean his mother probably and his dad if he was there too, they probably lost years of their life because of this.
I,
Like I can't imagine.
I really can't imagine.
All right, let's get into other death news.
So let's talk about King Tut. Over 100 years ago, his tomb was discovered, so we kind of know a lot about him because of how well documented it was. So, obviously, when they found the tomb, they found his remains, in addition to many riches, including his infamous gold death mask. So, everybody is familiar with that, and I feel like it's this universal symbol of Egypt. So, something lesser known about when they found his body was when they were looking at the mummy, they discovered he was buried and mummified with an erect penis.
Yeah, he had a lot of different things done to his body that weren't typically done during the embalming process, including having this black liquid all over his body. And as Maria said, his penis was erect. And they think that this has something to do with him representing himself as this god Osiris. And apparently, his dad had undone a religion that was very popular in Egypt. And this was his way of kind of he reinstated the religion after his father died, and this may have been his way to be like, "Look at me. I'm this god Osiris now," and it's just it brings up really interesting questions about what you request when you're when you die, if you have any kind of pre-planned funeral arrangements or anything like that, to just be like, "I want my body to look like this." And they think that he was the one that requested these things to give this appearance of this god.
Yeah, so this Egyptologist, which when I was talking about on the other episode, the Cleopatra hand on that TV show, it
Oh,
also
yeah.
said that guy was an Egyptologist. And I said to Ricky, this sounds like a made up word that you would title yourself because you're so fascinated by Egyptian culture. But
It is really it's so cool. It's just so cool, and I would love to go there one day.
But it's a real title, and this person said, upon his death, he morphs into the god Osiris, god of the dead, and Osiris is shown because he is rebirth, resurrection, and fertility with the erect member and a dark color because this blackness represents the black fertile soil that the Nile flooded deposited. So very interesting.
It is interesting. It's just funny that the people that were embalming him had to like pay attention to his penis.
Yeah, but
It's
I mean,
like think
imagine
about
the
that. Like
thrill
if
of finding a mummy. Like you want to know every single detail
I know,
about
I'm
it.
just saying, like think about that today. Like if some person was like, "Yes, I want to be buried with my penis erect," like everybody would be like, "That's so weird."
Honestly, I'm sure it happens because every day we
I
learn
just don't
something
want.
more
Yeah,
outrageous.
I know. You're probably right.
All right, on to questions of the day. Every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you could head over to our story and ask us a question. So first, which autopsy dissection do you find the most difficult for you or for students?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, I think it's the most difficult to take out the brain and the spinal cord all attached in one piece, which my mentor Joey made me do several times. Because you have to put the person down. Normally, when you do an autopsy, the person's laying on their back, but you have to put them down on their chest and take it out from the back. And it's just hard. It's hard to do it all attached in one piece, especially to get through the spinal bones through the back like that. It's just a little, and to dissect through the muscles and everything of the back. It's just a little bit more difficult. And for students, obviously that one would be hard for students too, but just like for average normal autopsies, I would say just taking out the brain is probably the part that people find the most difficult just because of you have to use a power tool, a bone saw. A lot of people aren't even comfortable with that. And it's if you don't do it the right way and you don't have a sharp blade and all, it just makes it's very difficult to get through the bone if you don't know how to do it right. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge with students.
All right, next. Do you have to know the circumstances in order to determine the cause of death?
Not always. I mean, like it's sometimes it doesn't matter. Like if you just threw a dead body in front of me and I opened it up and found a pulmonary embolism or a hemorrhagic stroke or something, like it doesn't matter like what you say. It's there and you could see it. There's something you could see happened. It's nice to know the circumstances just because it could be like, well, what medical condition did they have that caused them to have a hemorrhagic stroke or to have a pulmonary embolism or things like that? But ultimately, like if they have a pulmonary embolism, that's how they died. So you really wouldn't have to know anything else. That's just how they died. But in cases at the medical examiner's office, especially, like if they find a person that's dead and they know who they are and they're able to get a hold of their family members and they're able to sometimes even get a hold of the person's doctors, that that's always the best. But like there's so many times sometimes they don't even know who a person is when they're dead.
Yeah.
And or the person just doesn't have a doctor or whatever. So you can't always just rely on having history when you're doing the autopsy.
All right, last. When did you both get your first tattoos and what were they?
I was 15 and I got a butterfly on my ankle from a place called Sailor Eddie's Tattoo in Runnymede, New Jersey.
Oh,
And
it
the
was in
guy,
Runnymede?
yeah, it was in Runnymede. It was like next to the video store. You probably don't even know that. But yeah, the guy just was like, "Oh, are you 18?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Such a different
I like
time.
butterflies. I always have. There was no like meaning to it or anything. I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I was 21 and I just got black roses small also on my ankle.
Let's not even talk about Maria's tattoo situation because like when Maria was old enough to get a tattoo, that was the first one.
Yeah, it's just 2 little black roses.
She was old enough to get a tattoo and she got like 3 or 4 stupid ones. And finally me and Gabe were yelling at her. We're like, "Your parents are friends with some of the best artists in the city for sure, probably United States and sometimes the entire world. and you are going to like these shitty people and getting tattoos. We were so mad about it.
Yeah, I agree it was stupid and I was being influenced by the people around me at the time and it was idiotic, but I got in shape quick and turned it around. Except I just have one on my leg that's probably I gotta get blacked out or something. It's so horrible.
Yeah, we were so mad about it. I'm just like, why would you go to these she would just go to a shop she could like walk into, and we were so annoyed about it.
Well, I learned my lesson and most of my bad ones are covered up or on my legs at this point. So
Yeah, you do need to get that one covered up because I hate it. It's terrible.
I mean, I don't know. It's so heavy on the black. I don't even know how I'm going to.
You could put like a black turd over top of it and it would look better.
It was like also one of those situations where the sketch just looked completely different than the result. Like it's like a witch, and like the broomstick ended up coming out of the ass. The boobs are like pointing two different ways. I'm like, this is not what the sketch looked like at all.
Even if the sketch looked good, there's no reason. Like, you don't really like Halloween. Why would you need a naked person on your leg? Like, it's not like you're like, oh, I love Halloween. Like this. What's the witch?
I don't know. I was 21 and 22 and being stupid. Like, it's just how it was.
I understand that.
But I don't know. And like, honestly, most people probably would have made that mistake at 15 or 16 years old. But I was being a pussy and not getting tattooed because I have like a low-key, not really low-key needle phobia. And I didn't want to get
low-key, yeah. Low-key is like having to freaking call a medevac when she gets blood taken. That's the low-key.
Okay, last time I got my blood taken, I was fine, but that was probably because I had them come to my house.
Oh, okay. Meanwhile, your 9-year-old sister just like sticks out her arm and goes to the place and gets it done. And then the guy's like, you're my best patient ever. And you're better than every adult that I take blood from.
Listen, not everybody could be as brave as Luber. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just how it is. All right, guys, don't forget to submit your shocking story to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. We love to hear it all. And thank you for listening to this week's episode.
Yeah, don't forget to leave us reviews.
Thanks.
See you next week. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.